Okay, so we can make a start then. Okay, so welcome everyone to the virtual planning meeting of the 22nd of July 2020 at 7:30. My name is Councillor Heffernan and I'm chairing the planning committee. My vice chair is Kevin Burke, and if I lose signal at any point tonight, Councillor Burke will take over. Could I first of all thank all the members that have made it here tonight. If you do run into any IT issues, you can contact Kathy Hayward from Community Services. Her contact details are on your invite to this meeting. And I'd also like to say welcome and thank you for those of you that are joining us on YouTube tonight. This is being live streamed, so hello to those people. And before we carry on, I'm just going to quickly mention a few key points so we can make sure that this meeting flows smoothly. The first of all is, can we please only speak when I call on you to do so, and don't speak over any other people who are speaking. That's going to be particularly an issue for those watching on YouTube, because they won't be able to hear two people at once. If you do need to speak at any point, if you can mention in the chat box, if you can raise there any points of order, or tell me that you want to comment or debate, we'll use that so the meeting moves smoothly. And I'm going to, if we go on quite a long time today, I'll schedule some breaks in between, just so we don't have as much eye strain, and we can take some comfort breaks if necessary. So as we begin the meeting, I'm going to ask the clerk to do a roll call of all of those that are in attendance. And could I ask that at the same time, members let us know if you've got any declarations of interest at the same time. Okay, so Cassie, would you mind doing the roll call?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Members, as I read your name, please turn on your microphone and camera and state if you are present and if you have any interest to declare in an item on the agenda. After you have spoken, please switch your microphone and camera off. If I do not hear from a member, I shall return to them at the end of the roll call. So, first of all, Councillor Eric Allen.
Present and no declaration of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Burke.
Yeah, present and no declaration of interest.
Councillor Richard Clare.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Tim Foster.
Present, no interest to declare, but I would like to address something procedural before we get into the meat of the business.
Would you mind if we do that after the roll call?
Yeah, carry on. Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. Councillor Vincent Gavin.
Present. I spoke to some neighbours at the Greenwich block. Application 6, but it won't affect any decision I might make.
Councillor Peter Geringer.
Present and no interest.
Councillor Amy Haldane.
Present, I have nothing to declare, no interest.
Councillor Tony Shields.
Present with no interest to declare.
Councillor Jill Whitehead.
Present and no declarations of interest.
And finally, Councillor Drew Heffernan.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Thank you, councillors. I shall now pass back to the chair.
Thank you. Councillor Foster, can I bring you in just before item 5? So can I do agree the minutes first, or is your comment to do with the minutes?
Absolutely. No, carry on.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So we've covered apologies for absence in the roll call. So the next agenda item is item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting. I'm going to give a few seconds for people to raise any objections to that. Otherwise, if you can just let me know in the chat box whether you want to agree the minutes or not. Cool, brilliant, thank you. I think that's they're agreed. Agenda item 4 is declarations of interest, and again we've covered those in the roll call. And so before we move on to item 5, Councillor Foster, do you want to come in?
Yeah, my concern, and I raised this with Gavin Chinner during briefing meeting, I had a real concern about page 47 of tonight's schedule, 117. I'm raising it now because I had a concern that it said the last line was the application was subsequently withdrawn prior to a decision being issued. We made a decision on that particular case on the 6th of November. It was said to have been withdrawn on the 3rd of December. If we look at the minutes that were signed off by Councillor Burke in December, the refusal was in there. And the reason for me raising it before we start is that my understanding of this committee was that we're not a rubber stamp operation. We are a committee delivering considered opinions on planning issues. And I don't understand how we make a decision and virtually a month after that decision is made, the application is withdrawn and we're all start all over again. Maybe Gavin Chinner would be able to explain it, but I have a real concern. Are the decisions made by this committee final, or are they subject to anything apart from a planning inspector's appeal?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. To be honest, this is something that I raised in my briefing as well, so I'll pass over to Gavin on this issue.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and Councillor Foster for your comments there. In terms of the application, I appreciate a decision was made in November and the application was withdrawn on the 3rd of December. And I acknowledge that that was a whole month has lapsed in terms of that. Just in terms of the procedure by the planning committee and also by applicants, they are, although members have made a decision on the planning application, and if it is overturned at planning committee, applicants are allowed to withdraw the application if they do not want to get a refusal on the application itself. I cannot state why there was a delay from that November planning committee to the withdrawal on the 3rd of December. But I just wanted to make something clear to members. Although the application was withdrawn, the new application which has been submitted as part of this application has taken on board all the comments raised in terms of the access to the site, also the inadequate width of the driveway for access for by emergency vehicles and the refuse vehicles also, and also the concerns raised by pedestrian safety whilst accessing the site. All these matters for pedestrian safety have been considered in terms of the highway safety assessment. So it should be highlighted, although the application was withdrawn, this has not disadvantaged members or the process, as this has meant that a new application has been submitted, allowing members to reconsider these matters as part of the process. As such, this is in front of you tonight to consider again, with matters being addressed by the applicants. That's all I have to say on that matter. Are there any further questions?
I think Councillor Shields has a further question.
Thank you, Chair. I do. Councillor Foster is entirely diligent and correct in his findings. Now, as I read it, the London Borough of Sutton is the applicant. We have chosen as an elected committee to refuse a document, to refuse an application. The refusal has not been issued in a timely way. The applicant has had the luxury of a month to withdraw their application. And I think this is a probity issue. This is the council judging itself. And I don't think any other outside body would have the same luxury that the council is affording itself, all in the name of democracy. This is terrible, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Gavin, do you want to?
Yeah, in terms of the timeline, in terms of the withdrawal, I'm not too sure why that time delay has actually happened to the 3rd of December. The officer who was working on that application has now left the council towards the beginning of this year. So I cannot state why there has been a delay in terms of the application being withdrawn. But I'm just coming back to the issue that although the applicant is the council and they have submitted an application, they do have the right to still withdraw the application after the decision has been made by planning committee.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just quickly ask Matthew about any consequences for our decision tonight, but I think the point has been made, and by all three of us actually. But Matthew, do you want to just come in on this, and then we'll move to the first item and make sure this is noted in the minutes?
Yes, happy to, Chair. So I'll just first of all say I don't know the ins and outs of this case specifically. On the question, it's a legitimate question about committee made a decision in November. The decision notice wasn't issued at least until December, at which point the application was withdrawn. So there hasn't been a decision to refuse issued. I don't know myself, I suppose, the planning procedure around that, because a committee might make a decision, but planning officers may actually have to issue a formal notice. So just on that point, Chair, I could perhaps, it might be, I'm sure Gavin or someone can advise the members of the committee in the coming days why that was, and Gavin can look into the delay and just advise on the sort of planning procedure there. On the matter of the item on tonight's agenda, it is essentially a different application. So an application was submitted in November, it was turned down by the committee, and that application has sort of, I suppose, disappeared in a sense. The application on the agenda tonight is a different application, so members can either, agree or refuse that application for the reasons they want to give. But it is a different application, so the issue with the first one shouldn't affect members' decision making on the one that's on the agenda tonight. Chair, I don't know if Alison Letts from the South London Legal Partnership would want to come in on anything, but that would be my input on that.
Okay, thank you. Alison, did you want to come in? And then I do want to move on to the main agenda items.
Of course, Councillor. Yes, Alison Letts, Legal Officer. I don't know the background to that decision, but I think the key question is: has any unfair advantage arisen to this applicant? Sorry, has any unfair advantage arisen to this applicant? Now, if the decision notice had been issued and obviously a refusal, yes, they could have appealed it, but equally they could have submitted a new application, which may well have got to committee at the same time as this application has. So there's possibly no advantage in terms of fees, say, timescale. I appreciate that obviously these things should be done in a timely fashion, and I do not know why it wasn't, but I don't necessarily believe that any particular advantage has risen to the applicant. And of course the report does make it clear that the earlier application was refused by members. If any queries, please advise.
Okay, thank you. I think I don't want to take too much longer this, but I know that Councillor Shields and Councillor Foster don't come in. If we can make that pretty brief, and I think we can then go away and if Gavin wants to respond to that outside this meeting, and with that timeline we can do that. So Tony, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think outside the meeting is exactly the way to take it. I think you should defer this. This is unfair advantage. This is sharp practice. No other developer, no other person or applicant will be given this treatment, this advantage. Ms. Letts tells us there was no advantage. If there was no advantage, then why was due diligence due process not taken out? As soon as we have any applicant for anything feels they can get a refusal from a committee, the refusal doesn't get issued, they can then withdraw the application and come back de novo, a new application, and it's all okay. Well, I've got to tell you, Chair, it's not okay. We're elected to make decisions. We took a decision. The authority has failed to issue that decision by some considerable time. And through your good office, you think I implore you to at least defer this until we have some kind of steward's inquiry as to how this has come about. And indeed, if other applicants have had the same advantage, I'd like to know about it, because I'm very concerned about the process engaged. Message ends.
Thanks. Councillor Foster?
I suppose it's in the same tone, but at that meeting, the project manager, the housing manager, the whole team from housing were there at the meeting. Also, if you listen to the record, the head of planning, Mr. Webber, actually sought to say that the issues that have been raised could be covered by condition, and it had to be pointed out that it was too late because a decision had been made. I think that what's happened is something that, as Councillor Shields has pointed out, is not right. No other applicant would be afforded this, and it's not a matter of we didn't get it in the post. They were there, they occupy the same building, and I think it is sharp practice is the best way I can describe it. And I don't think, with great respect, Gavin, that given the time and the issues being raised, that your explanation was adequate. I can see what's happened with the application. I can see the changes that have been made. I wasn't raising this issue as to sort of pre-debate the planning application. I raised it because if we make a decision on the grapes tonight, will it be withdrawn? Will something happen? Because if anybody is watching this and reading the issues, then a sharp developer will do exactly as Councillor Shields suggests, and they should be able to get away from it because there is precedent for the London Borough of Sutton planning.
Okay, I think, Gavin, do you want to add anything to this? I think we have got a discussion from Alison about this situation. Essentially, this planning application could have come again anyway. I think there is an issue with the process that I think could be taken possibly outside the meeting for another discussion. But Gavin, did you want to add anything?
I mean, I just wanted to add. Is my microphone on? I just wanted to add in terms of the queries raised by councillors. I mean, obviously, a decision is made by members of the planning committee, and if a developer wishes to withdraw the application before a decision is issued, they are within their rights to actually do that. But in terms of getting further information on this issue, and also in terms of the current application being considered tonight, I strongly believe that members are not being disadvantaged by this process, because this is a brand new application which is being considered by the London Borough of Sutton, and all the issues which have been taken on board from the previous application are being considered tonight as part of this application.
Okay.
So may I add, yes, Alison Letts, Legal Officer. I do concur with Gavin that this is obviously a new application and can be decided on its merits tonight. May I suggest that evidently the queries regarding the planning process and the timely issue of the decision notice can obviously be addressed outside this meeting. And I don't know whether Matthew can confirm whether or not the applicants will be present tonight to discuss. Maybe they can elucidate further.
Apologies, Alison. I don't know myself. I'm sure Cassie or Kathy can advise the chair on that. I think they would. I think the chair would knows that they're
on my speakers list.
Yeah, I think we are expecting them.
They are
Drew, I've asked a question here, Drew, and I'd like to be able to put it forward if you don't mind.
You did.
Gavin. With all respect, Gavin, I'm just very surprised that the comment you made, which is that you're not sure why it took a month for this application to be turned down. It's really unacceptable. This is an internal issue within the London Borough of Sutton. They've basically taken a month to get all their cards in order, and then they've turned it down, by which time you've withdrawn the application. To me, this is sharp practice. You would not allow this to happen if it was a private developer. And therefore, on that basis, I am not prepared to even consider this application tonight. I think it needs to be withdrawn, and this committee should refuse to actually look at this application.
I think, Councillor Allen, I think we can come back to you on this issue outside this meeting. But as we've said tonight in terms of this current application. This is a brand new application.
Well, it's not. This is just a rehash of the application we had before. It is literally Sutton Council applying to build their own property on land, and they're basically riding roughshod over everyone else. A private developer would not be allowed to get away with this. So why should we even consider it? Because it's a council application who've taken over a month to actually reach a decision or to send out a notice, by which time the application has been withdrawn. Sharp practice.
Chairman, I've asked to speak and you haven't called me.
I'm also asked to speak.
Yeah, I know you both have. I think we have spent some time with this today. I don't think there's anything extra that could be said to add more to this question. I think we should, outside this meeting, get something from the planning service to explain what occurred for this original application. We've had legal advice today that, as this is a separate application, there is no reason why we can't make a decision on the application tonight. And I think it would be probably improper also for us to ignore that advice when we come to that item. I can also raise this with the monitoring officer after the meeting, but I do think we should move on to the main agenda items tonight. We have covered this issue, and it's been raised both inside and outside the meeting by all three, as Councillor Foster, Councillor Hughes and myself. But I do think that we do need to move on. I've said that the first item we're going to take is Carew Manor. So what I'm going to do is ask the officer to present for Carew Manor.
Okay.
Sorry, is it Danica? Is it you this one?
Yeah. Okay. Can you all see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this item relates to full planning and listed building consent at Carew Manor to be considered together for the erection of a new single-storey modular building to provide 2-number classrooms for a temporary period of 5 years. This site plan shows the wider site area incorporating the Grade 1 listed Carew Manor School, and shows that the site is bordered by Grade 2-star St Mary's Church to the southwest and Church Road to the west, and Carew Manor Cottages to the north, and the wider Bennington Park surrounding the site. The whole site is within a metropolitan open land. Here you can see photographic images of the existing temporary structure, modular building on site, taken from the south. This was given planning and listed building consent in August 2018 and is due to be taken down on 31st of August 2020. These photos are basically taken of the surroundings immediately of the proximity of the existing modular building. This is an aerial photo showing the site and the surroundings, including the location of the existing temporary modular building on the southeast of the site. The location of the proposed modular building is indicated immediately to the south and 90 degrees of the existing structure. This plan shows the proposed layout of the site with the existing and proposed single-storey modular building situated to the southeast of the site. This is the block plan indicating the existing and proposed site. Also, existing proposed modular building in greater detail in the context of the immediate site and surroundings. So this is the floor plan showing the layout of the 2 classrooms within the building with the entrance ramp and entrance door. A roof plan is indicated. And this shows the proposed elevation of the modular building. Okay, the main issues. In terms of land use, the proposal is acceptable in principle. There are very special circumstances exist which would allow the development of metropolitan open land. The proposal would increase educational facilities within the borough, and the impact on the openness of the MOL is minimised by the siting and mitigated by the temporary nature of the proposed classrooms, which is to be taken down in 5 years. In terms of design, the setting of the adjoining listed buildings will be adequately protected by the discrete location and the temporary permission of 5 years of the proposed modular building. And it's noted that Historic England has been consulted on the applications and they have not commented. And given the demonstrable public benefits to the scheme, no objections are raised to the proposal. Thank you, Chair and committee members. That concludes my presentation. The case before you is recommended for approval of planning permission and listed building consent, subject to conditions including the requirement for the development to be taken down in 5 years. Thank you.
What we're going to do when it comes to the vote for this one is take both of the items together. There'll be one vote and then you'll be able to, members of the committee will be able to say if they agree with both or neither. Do we have any questions on this particular item, or should we move to the vote on this one? We don't have any registered speakers and we've received no written statements for this. Councillor Foster's got a question, and then I think that's the only member we've got. So, Councillor Foster?
Yeah, I'm just wanting to, I'm interested, reported both on social media and seen with my own eyes, was a dirty great crane outside Carew Manor a couple of weeks ago delivering. Are we talking about after the event here, or was that for some other reason? In other words, have the team already put that classroom in place, and so we're effectively looking at post permission?
Sure. Danica, do you have an answer to that one? Why the might be there?
I don't know if Gavin knows anything more.
Yeah, I can come here, Chair, to answer Councillor Foster's question. So yes, Councillor Foster is correct. They have taken delivery of the new temporary classroom. I actually emailed the project manager for this site and they've taken delivery and they're actually currently setting it up at the moment. But in terms of it being finished and completed, it's not the case yet. It's just they've taken delivery of the classroom at the moment.
Councillor Foster, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I knew that. Social media knew that. It's a great pity that it wasn't, but I've got no problem because I want these kids to have the facility. But again, we're talking a procedural issue, and I think local knowledge, local people know that was done. And here we are going to grant it planning permission when, I know it isn't all plumbed in and all the rest of it, but there's an assumption, yeah, it's all going to be okay. Now, this was actually coming down the tubes a long time ago, and this could have been in a planning committee prior to tonight. There was no delay. It's been quite a long time in the gestation period. It's been mentioned in all of the issues to do with machine way planning, which has managed to get into the schedules. I'm just surprised we haven't done this because it's pushing against an open door from my point of view, and I'm sure other members of the committee, but it's just a procedural thing. We've got to get our act together and do it the right way around.
I think, Chair, can I just come back onto that point, yeah. Councillor Foster's point? Yeah, I appreciate that the building has been shipped in and they are setting up the actual temporary classroom. I think the reason for that is because of COVID-19 and given the delays in terms of actually delivering that item. And this is the reason why the council has taken delivery of this item earlier than the committee meeting. Just coming back to the point in terms of applications coming soon to the planning committee, since March there's been obviously a backlog in committee meetings and setting them all up, and there's been a backlog of applications coming forward, hence reason why this application hasn't come sooner to planning committee.
Cool, thank you. I mean, it's 21 weeks, isn't it? So that would have been just before the lockdown. There's some application being submitted. If my timelines are right with that, and yeah, I mean, Councillor Whitehead's got a comment, but I mean, one thing I would say is it's not like, even if it was built and then an application put in, it's not. There's nothing improper about an application once something's in place. Obviously, that isn't necessarily the situation here. Councillor Whitehead.
Yes, in response to Councillor Foster, I was actually going for a walk around Beddington Park when I actually saw the classrooms being delivered and put into the space where they're like to be developed. I reported this to the Parks Department, who didn't know anything about it, and I then received an email from Paul Dalgio, who said they originally were meant to be put in place in May, but as Gavin has said, due to COVID-19 that had been delayed, and therefore he told me they will be put in place after the planning committee of today, because I did ask him whether I did say to him, well, this is coming to planning committee, and they shouldn't be put up beforehand. And he said they wouldn't be put up beforehand, and they would wait till the decision of planning committee. That's what I was told by the officers. And this was asset management officers, I should say.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily there's a procedural issue here, given that we have applications, even once things are built, coming to this committee, and they're perfectly legal and legitimate. But if there's no questions on the technical aspects of this, I'm going to suggest that we move to the vote on this item. So Cassie, do you mind doing a roll call of the committee members? And again, if we can say if you're in favour of both agenda item, is it a 7 and 8 or 8 and 9? When you do your vote, so we don't have to do 2 roll calls.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members, as I read your name, please turn on your microphone and camera and state if you are voting for, against or abstain on the recommendation. After you have spoken, please switch off your microphone and camera. So first of all, Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Burke.
I'm for both.
Councillor Clare.
In favour of both.
Councillor Foster.
I'm in favour of both.
Councillor Galligan.
For both.
Councillor Geringer.
In favour of both.
Councillor Haldane.
In favour of both.
Councillor Shields.
Yes to both, please, in favour.
Councillor Whitehead.
In favour of both.
And Councillor Heffernan.
In favour of both. You got Councillor Burke on your list, Cassie? Oh, you already done Councillor Burke earlier. Yeah, sorry.
So that's 10 votes in favour for both applications.
Okay, thank you. So you can say that item is disposed. Thank you for everyone for your votes on that. We're going to move back to the normal order of the agenda. So it's going back to the application of the grapes. So can I ask officers to give your report on that one, please, your presentation?
Just confirming you can see my screen, Chair. Chair, agenda item 5 relates to the Grapes Public House, High Street, Sutton. And can I refer members to the published addendum and the reallocation of the proposed carbon offset fund to the affordable housing contribution, which should now total £97,089. The site is located within the pedestrianised High Street at the junction with Ben Hill Avenue. It currently comprises a Part 2, Part 3-storey building with a relatively small beer garden to the rear of the building. The frontage building dates from the Victorian period and is locally listed and is a public house that is considered to be of importance to the local street scene. It is also located within the Sutton High Street conservation area. This is a view of the site frontage, and you'll note the public house has been shut for a number of years. A view of Ben Hill Avenue frontage looking towards the east. This is the reverse view from Froley Way looking west. A closer view of the frontage and the newer additions, and a view of the existing beer garden and the adjacent 3-storey building. This plan showing the public house in this location, the outside beer garden, and then a rear yard to the south. With the current proposal, including the loss of the public house, which is now retained, previously provided in relation to air quality, parking or energy. In addition, the proposal was refused due to the detailed design, scale, mass and bulk, which was considered to be an overdevelopment of this site and presented an overly dominant building which failed to respect the local context. The excessive height and bulk was also considered to result in an adverse impact on joining neighbours' outlook, daylight and sunlight. Chair, the current proposal is for extensions to the existing 3-storey building to create a Part 3, Part 4 and Part 5-storey building comprising 26 self-contained flats, including the change of use of the existing first and second floor elements of the public house to a residential use. The ground floor plan shows the retention of the public house with a residential entrance and ground floor units accessed directly from Ben Hill Avenue. The proposal retains the public house to the front of the high street and provides 26 residential units with an acceptable number of family-sized units which meet the London Plan internal space standards. The layout of the residential units at first and second floors, and the recessed third floor, which retains the original roof form of the original frontage building, and the further recessed fourth floor. And this just shows the retained basement to the public house and the roof plan. The proposal is considered acceptable in terms of its design, which reflects the characteristics of the existing building and continues these through the existing extension, the new extension, using mansard roofs to reduce the bulk and separating the new elements from the key frontage building. The height of the proposal respects the lower scale to the high street, to this side of the elevation, and transitions to the 5-storey height to the rear, which accords with a taller building designation for the site, and would respect the heritage assets and surrounding conservation area. This is the high street elevation and the eastern flank elevation. The CGI submitted show the proposed design in greater clarity and the continuation of the appearance of the existing building through detailing and materials. In regards to affordable housing, the proposal has been independently assessed, which confirms the applicant's assessment that development cannot provide on-site affordable housing. The applicant has committed to make a contribution of £97,089 towards off-site affordable housing, and this is considered acceptable in this instance. The proposal also provides contributions towards the provision of blue badge parking, a late-stage review for affordability, and the required payment for the community infrastructure levy. The applicant has submitted a daylight sunlight survey, and the proposal would not impact the surrounding properties beyond the accepted tolerances. And the relationship between the proposal and surrounding residential units is considered acceptable in this town centre location. The application is car-free in this sustainable location and makes a contribution towards blue badge parking, and future owners will be precluded from obtaining a residence parking permit and is therefore considered acceptable in this respect. Chair, the application is therefore recommended for approval subject to the suggested conditions and completion of a legal agreement to secure the detailed contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Just unmute myself. Thank you, Jodie. Councillor Whitehead has a question, and then we'll move on to see if anyone else has got one. Councillor Whitehead?
Yes, I've got two questions. First of all, about page 1 of the addendum report, where we report that the carbon offset fee will be prioritised for affordable housing over delivery of carbon offsetting. On Friday, I attended an LGA tutorial which says that local authorities should give priority to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that climate change should be given priority to other impacts because of climate change issues at the present time. So I don't know how this fits in with that. Are the sustainability measures at 2.5 on page 8 sufficient to reduce the carbon impact? And what more needs to be done to make them zero carbon so they would fit in with the UN Sustainable Development Goals? Just to say that we are a climate change council, and being a member of the climate change task and finish group, I do think we should take this into consideration, and we do need to start giving climate change some sort of priority. So that's a question on the carbon offset. I also have a question on the affordable housing and the size of the units. I note that it says in the report that it's only marginally viable, this development, and there's no affordable housing. This is a higher level building in an area designated for taller buildings. The last meeting of the planning committee approved a development out of the town centre for 100% affordable housing in an area not designated for tall buildings. So I don't understand the arguments for viability, as they seem contradictory. I don't understand how this cannot be viable, yet another development out of the town centre is viable. And in that regard, we've got in this development 60% approximately 1 bed and 40% 2 to 3 beds. And that's supposed to make it viable. This again feeds into the viability argument when we know there is a demand for family housing rather than more 1 bed housing. So I would like some answers on what is viable and what isn't viable and where.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come in on those points, so the carbon fund and then also the viability assessment, Gavin or Jodie?
Yes, Chair. In terms of sustainability and affordable housing, obviously both are very important issues. In terms of the fee, the current guidance in terms of the adopted policies of the London Borough of Sutton seek to prioritise affordable housing over the carbon offset fund, and obviously that's something officers have come back on in terms of the addendum and suggested that that be allocated to affordable housing, and obviously understand the point, obviously, in regards to sustainability also being an important issue. In regards to the viability, each site is assessed on its own merits, so I don't think you can relate one site where, from memory, last time was approved with 100% affordable housing to another. Obviously, the applicant has come in with a financial viability assessment with details to the likely costs and likely sales values, and that has been independently assessed by the council's financial viability experts, who have agreed the conclusions from that report, which the application isn't viable with any on-site affordable housing provision, and it makes a contribution towards off-site affordable as detailed within the report.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Garringer in a second, but before we do that, Councillor Allen has just put in the chat that in your presentation you said it's been closed for a number of years, but I think it's only been closed for about a year. So I think we can put that clarification on the record. I don't think there's anything in the agenda, the pack itself, the agenda pack, that says the length of time that the pub's been closed. But of course, unless you want to raise anything, Councillor Allen, on this point, and of course the pub will be retained, the use for a pub will be retained on this site anyway. But Councillor Allen, did you want to add anything apart from that?
I just want to clarify the fact that it gives the impression this has been derelict for some time, when in fact it's only been empty for just over or just under 2 years. So it's not, as was stated by the officer, a number of years.
Yeah, no, thank you. But like I said, I think there is still the pub will be retained anyway. It's not like we're developing a pub itself, but I take your point on that, and I'm sure Jodie's happy to clarify that, have that clarification as well. Councillor Garringer?
Yeah, thanks. I regularly go past there on the bus when I go to Morden, and yeah, it's probably been closed for about a year, certainly not 2 years. I mean, you can see the grass growing where the people used to drink in the yard. I wanted to say that I really like the design of this building. I have to congratulate whoever did the design, because it's a million times better than what was there before. My only main concern is that the road there, I mean, the building is very close to the road. It's a large building. The road itself takes buses, which goes across the high street to St Nicholas Way. And my concern is when it's being built, will that road still be in use or not? And if so, buses and traffic are going to find some other way to get across there.
Okay.
Could someone give me an indication about that? Because I think it's important.
Sure, I'll ask Jodie to answer.
Chair, there's a condition for a construction logistics plan, and those details would need to be agreed with both the London Borough Sutton Highways Department and TfL. As Councillor Garringer points out, it is a bus route, so those details would need to be provided, and obviously they would need to make arrangements so as not to adversely affect the flow of traffic, or if they were to, then alternatives arrangement would need to be agreed by all parties for that to happen.
Okay. And sorry, Councillor Garringer, were you also
going to be and is it likely that the thing couldn't go ahead because of that?
I can come in on that one. As Jodie said, a construction logistics plan would be required, which we would need to have a look at in detail. We would liaise with key partners such as Transport for London on this, look at things very closely. So we wouldn't allow the development to go ahead unless satisfactory arrangements were made. But this is not untypical of quite a tight town centre location. So it has been demonstrated that this type of development can proceed in similar types of town centre locations. So, we anticipate that the challenges can be overcome.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gallagher's got a question, then we'll go back to Councillor Allen after that. Councillor Gallagher?
Thank you, Chair. Jodie, we know that not too far away from that building, there's been problems where we put in from conditions no parking permits, but I understand that there's been quite a lot of sort of angry people up at Civic on other developments saying that this wasn't explained to them and nothing was, they thought that they could get parking permits. Is there any way that within we can actually say something has to be advertised? The agents must show the people the details that they will not be allowed to have parking permits, so we don't have this problem going on with staff up at Civic.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. I think we've got the applicant here. Do you think, Nick, it would be better for them to answer that, or can you come in on it?
I can come in, Chair. Obviously, the details of what, if this is to be approved, then the Section 106, the decision notice are all on the public record. That should be part of the conveyancing process when prospective buyers purchase their flat. So they should all be readily aware of the constraints placed on a development which they wish to pursue. Obviously, I don't think we can insist on marketing and different elements from the actual applicant, but obviously it may be in their benefit, obviously, for them to do that. But obviously the details are all on the public record, so it shouldn't be a surprise to future occupiers on any development that there are constraints attached.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, do you want to come in and ask your question?
Yes, I just want to go back on this subject regarding the contribution for affordable housing. You were saying roughly 90,000 in total is being paid, of which about 37 is for carbon offset, which means that we're probably talking of less than 2% of the value of these flats being provided as a contribution. That doesn't seem anywhere near enough, bearing in mind that our target is 35%. So I don't see how we can even afford to, I mean, if we take the 37 away from the 90, we're down to about 53,000. It's not going to build much of an affordable house for 53,000 or contribute towards the building of an affordable house. So how was this figure calculated?
Okay, cool. Jodie?
Developers, where they cannot meet the 35%, are allowed through policy and guidance to submit a financial viability statement, which details the costs and sales values, and then it's submitted to us. Obviously, the developer submitted a financial viability statement saying they couldn't afford any on-site affordable contributions. That is then independently assessed by the council's financial viability experts, who concluded with the conclusions of that report that the site couldn't afford on-site affordable housing, but there was surplus, and the developer has committed to pay a contribution of £97,089 towards the funding of affordable housing off-site. Therefore, obviously, it has been independently assessed, and we have to take the recommendations of that independent assessor, who has checked all the inputs into that to make sure that it is correct and it is relevant to the market, and obviously we have to go with that, and obviously that's why we consider the affordable housing contribution in this instance to be acceptable.
Is that 97,000 including the carbon offset?
Yes, so the total for affordable housing contribution would be £97,089. Policy dictates that we should prioritise the provision of affordable housing, and that's why the addendum reallocates the carbon offset fund to affordable housing.
So we're not getting a carbon offset fund then, if you're allocating it all to affordable housing?
That's right.
So why say we've got a carbon offset fund when it's non-existent?
So obviously, where there is viability within, we would seek the contributions for everything. Where the viability dictates that there's only a certain amount of surplus, then we had to allocate that. And the policy and guidance at the moment states that we should prioritise the delivery of affordable housing over the carbon offset fund.
Okay, in which case, why are we even discussing a carbon offset fund when there isn't one being applied? To me, it's misinformation again. You're telling us that you have 37,000 for carbon offset fund, and you're telling us the total is 97,000 for affordable housing, and it is not. It's 63,000 or 60,000 for affordable housing, not 97.
Can I just come in here, Chair, about this? I think what Jodie's saying is very clear. I think the initial contribution was £60,000, and we have £37,000 for the carbon offset funds. In terms of the policy position, it states within the technical guidance that where the viability is strained and we cannot get enough affordable housing, priority should be made towards off-site affordable housing. So in this case, as there was a carbon offset fund and the viability position was very strained, very low in terms of on-site affordable, that £37,000 has been added to £60,000 to come up to £97,000. That's the current position. So the council, with the applicant, have agreed that the overall contribution for the off-site contribution is £97,000. Thank you.
It still doesn't answer the question as why are we saying there's a carbon offset fund when you're not offsetting against carbon. You're putting it all onto the affordable housing. I'm not objecting to the amount which is being paid. It's just the fact that you to some extent, you're giving information out which tends to imply that we have a carbon offset fund when we don't have. It's all going to affordable housing.
Councillor Allen, I think in terms of the addendum, which has been published as part of this application, that explains the reason why that has actually happened. in terms of offsetting that for affordable housing.
Okay, I think it's. I think the reasoning is pretty clear. Whether it's a sensible way of going about it is another question, and whether how we label the money is clear or not is a different question. But I think it's clear that it is very clear what the system is and what has happened in this case. So I think members can make a vote based on that information when it comes to the vote. But I've got a comment from Councillor Shields. Come next.
I would withdraw the comment. Councillor Allen has done a very good job there.
Okay, sure. No, thank you, Councillor. We do actually have the applicant here, Ian Coomber. I think you're on the call, aren't you, Ian?
Hello, Chair.
Hi. So we're moving on to the agenda item now, where you're given 4 minutes to speak. We don't have any written statements, which would normally come now. So what we're going to do is we'll start a timer when you start speaking. You'll have 4 minutes to address the committee, and then if it's okay, we'll have some questions from committee members.
Sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, Chair, I'd like to thank your planning team for a very thorough and professional report before you this evening, which robustly addresses all of the relevant issues and making the case for the planning approval. This has been a really long journey, but it's also a model of how any local planning authority and applicant should work together to compromise and be willing to adapt to find solutions to problems as they arise. The story goes back to 2018 when the Grapes received a planning refusal for a record number of reasons. All 11 of them are set out in para 1.4 of the report. My client then purchased the site and wanted to pursue a more meaningful proposal and engaged a professional team to assist him. My client also owns the block of flats immediately south of the Grapes. So in January 2019, a formal and meaningful pre-application process was engaged in, leading in April to a meeting with the planning team, which at the time we floated a largely contemporary scheme, and it originally proposed 32 flats, but the change of use to the pub to the cafe restaurant use was subsequently abandoned in favour of keeping a smaller pub offer. Now, the planning application lodged considerably revised to take into account the comments made during the application process. But as comments came forward, it became more and more apparent that the design needed some further work. So early in 2020, further meetings were held to openly debate the best way forward with the project, with the application being kept live, given the agreement between the parties. Any issues around the scheme could be resolved. Now, this produced, in my view, a far better scheme and evidence in itself. When parties engage in a design debate positively, so much can be achieved. Now, since then, the applicant team have worked closely, responding to all the consultees, making further modest change along the way. And a testament to this work is reference to no objections from any of these critical commentators in the decision-making process. And paragraph 3.10 and 3.11 of the report makes that clear. Now, generally, the planning system is indeed complex, and the report lists 2 pages of policies and guidance that's applicable. Now, I make this point as the scheme presented to you today has been very thoroughly explored and is the result of incredible amounts of hard work by both parties to the process. One of the inherent challenges with good design is how to balance that with costs. Now, the better the scheme is, the more expensive it invariably is, but the applicant feels that Sutton Town Centre is worthy of high quality architecture, not least as he owns the site next door. Now, as a consequence of build costs and all of the costs associated with planning applications such as this, you'll see set out in your report that it has not been financially viable to provide affordable homes. However, several housing associations were approached, but no interest was shown in small pockets of affordable units within a larger block. Despite the best efforts, it's proven impossible to deliver affordable homes on the project. And we now have a contribution in lieu. Now, despite this, and as a sign of good faith, in these challenging times, the contribution is offered even though the viability analysis, proving lack of viability, was conducted pre-COVID-19. None of us know the impact of property values that will arise in the coming months, and of course the construction phase here will take some time, and only then after the discharge of planning conditions and construction logistics plans. So in conclusion, I represent this case this evening with immense pride to have been part of the process, the fruit of which is the scheme before you this evening. The architects, Woods Hardwick, have produced numerous amended plans along the journey, the destination being the scheme before you this evening. Now, despite the proven lack of viability, a goodwill payment towards affordable housing is currently on offer with a review mechanism as set out in the report. The pub is retained, but with a new future whilst delivering new homes, and is a clear and public display of belief in town centre small-scale regeneration, which will help the high street in these uncertain times. The future of this locally listed building, with some considerable history attached to it, will be secured. Unsympathetic earlier additions will be removed and replaced with a successful design that fully respects its character. All key consultees raised no objection, and the proposal, and this relates to standard of accommodation, the lack of demonstrable negative impact on amenities, along with SIL and Section 106. Now, my client has an ongoing investment and involvement in Sutton. Sorry?
You bring your comments to a close. You're 4 minutes right.
Yeah, sure. Well, finally, Chair, I hope you endorse the recommendation this evening, reflecting as it does the work undertaken by the applicant and the positive manner in which your officers have rightly engaged in the regeneration of this difficult site. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I'm going to go to officers first. So, Jodie, is there anything you want to add or coming back on from the contribution there?
No, I don't think there's anything I need to come back on, Chair. Obviously, just reiterate, obviously, the contribution is as set out in the addendum.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a few people who've got questions and comments, if that's all right, Mr. Cooper. Councillor Whitehead, do you want to go first?
Yes, to go back to my previous question, I would like to know what efforts the developers are making to make the development. It already seems to be low carbon from the sustainability measures, but how will they turn the low carbon measures into zero carbon? Because I think that's going to be increasing concern in the weeks and months going ahead. Would they like to explain what the sustainability measures involve and how they can improve on them?
Well, thank you, Chair. We've had various discussions with, I think, your sustainability expert in-house, David Worthington, and completed various questionnaires along the way, because you may well be aware that there's a kind of a questionnaire type iterative process with applicants on projects such as this. So the sustainability process, the sustainability measures within the scheme are the best that could be achieved, mindful of the fact that this is virtually on the high street and they're it's a very heavily constrained site. And one of the things that we were keen to do is to create a 100 square metre green oasis as a rear communal space, which I think we've successfully done, which I think is incredibly rare when you're looking at such central urban sites. So what we've done is addressed as best we can the current policies and met those policy requirements. Moving forward, I think you will find that when you're looking at central urban sites and regeneration of buildings that are already there, it's much more difficult than in a more suburban site or a greenfield site where you have far greater freedom to build those measures in.
Okay, thank you. Joe, do you want to come back on that, or is that satisfactory?
Chair, that's satisfactory. Obviously, the conditions are in place, obviously, to ensure the development meets the relevant sustainability, and obviously we've discussed previously the contribution.
Got the notes. Thanks. Councillor Whitehead, did you want to add anything?
Well, really, it was to find just what he the developers talked about green space, but he hasn't talked about any of the other sustainability measures, for example, heat, noise, light, that sort of thing. So it's sustainability in the general sense, because I think in future the planning system will be taking this into account. And certainly the LGA seminar I went to on Friday indicated that the government may be making laws out of this to say that planning applications should include sustainability measures that take all these things into account.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Clement, do you have any information on the building itself and the building materials and et cetera, in terms of sustainability?
Oh, sorry, I had my microphone off there. If we go to page or paragraph 2.5 of the report before you, the sustainability measures are listed in there. With the aim of reducing regulated carbon dioxide. So a range of passive design measures such as energy efficient lighting, solar panels, photovoltaic and occupancy sensor lighting controls with timing switches, temperature zone controls. I mean, I'm not at all, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean, I regularly attend various sustainability seminars too, and it's quite clear that it's a growing agenda at the very heart of what town planning does. But I think the difficulty is that applicants address the policies that are in place that determine planning applications when they're lodged, which is effectively what we've done. I mean, I don't take away from the fact that the agenda should move further forward. As a town planner, I actively try and push that. But, you know, balancing all of the considerations in this case, it's a reasonable package of sustainability measures.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Shields, we'll move on to you if you've got a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I picked up on what the agent said, that housing associations were approached but no expressions of interest. Can you tell me, please, was Sutton Housing Partnership approached, our local affordable housing provider?
Mr. Cumber?
Sorry, I can't. I haven't got the full list in front of me because I'm the planning consultant, and the client engaged an affordable housing specialist to speak to all of those that are on the list. Now, I know that the planning case officer very kindly sent me through a list of all of the housing associations that Sutton partner up with, and that consultant then diligently worked through that list. What I would say, though, is that it's not uncommon that affordable housing providers prefer blocks that they can accommodate as a whole, rather than individual units that are pepper potted and sometimes remote from their kind of core business. So it's not uncommon, I think. If you're looking at schemes of 40 or 50 units of housing where there's a relatively large quantum of affordable housing providers tend to be more interested in those than the scheme such as this, which is large enough to be major but not large enough to have the critical mass to procure an interest from an affordable housing provider.
Okay, so I take it from that, I would imagine Sutton Housing. I'm sure the case officer can send me the list that he sent to the persons that dealt with you, and I'll be very interested. It's not for you to be interested if Sutton Housing Partnership are actually refusing the option of affordable housing units. There's no relevance on this case, but it certainly has twitched my antennae, to say the least.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Burke.
Yeah, thank you. Might surprise people that I'm interested in the pub. Have we got a tenant for that? Is it likely to have a tenant, or is that something for the future? I'm just curious as to why we're insisting on a pub there.
Is that for me to answer, Chair?
Yes,
Yeah. What I will say is that during the life of the planning application, there's been some relatively passive marketing of the reduced pub offering that's been undertaken, but obviously it doesn't have planning permission, let alone yet built, and yet alone let converted. So it's early days in terms of finding an occupier, but the evidence suggests that the kind of super pub offering has become over a period of time much less popular, and significant research went into ensuring that enough floor space of the pub was retained for more of a kind of real out type offering or something along those lines, rather than a kind of a super pub.
Yeah, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor White, have I got you on the list of speakers on the chat? Was this from before, or have you got another question?
It was before.
Okay, cool. No, thank you. So unless there's any other members who wish to come in, I'd just like to thank Mr. Cumber for coming to see us this evening and for answering those questions. And what we'll do now is move on to debate. If anyone wants to raise this or move to the vote. So,
okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of ground has been covered. I would thank the applicant's agent for his very, very good oration. I think we've all read the paperwork. I think we can all see that it's a regeneration of the site. I think we wouldn't mind if you went to the vote, but of course you are the chairman.
Cool, thank you. I've just got one comment from Councillor Burke and then we'll move to the vote. Councillor Burke?
No, I'm happy with that. I was just going to support it as well, so happy to go to the vote.
Right, thank you. Cassie, do you mind doing the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. Members, please state if you're voting for, against or abstaining. So Councillor Allen?
I'm voting for.
Councillor Burke?
For.
Councillor Clare?
For.
Councillor Foster?
I'm voting for.
Councillor Galligan?
For.
Councillor Geringer?
For.
Councillor Haldane?
For.
Councillor Shields?
For.
Councillor Whitehead?
For.
And Councillor Heffernan?
For.
So that's 10 votes for.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone who spoke on that, and thank you for Mr. Cunningham for coming to see us, and thank you for all members for your votes. We're going to move on now to the garage block on Southway. Obviously, we've had some discussion about this earlier on. I think we should listen to the item, the officer's report, and then we've got 2 registered speakers. If there's any discussion coming from earlier on, we can have that in the debate stage before we move to the votes. So can I ask the officer to present this item, please?
Hi, sorry, just bear with me 1 second.
Nice.
Okay, thank you, Chair, committee members. This is agenda item 6. This item relates to garage block at Southway in Wallington. The proposal is for the demolition of 30 garages and the erection of 5 two-storey dwelling houses, all 2-bed, with 5 car parking spaces and new hard and soft landscaping works and access from Southway. It's worth noting at this point that an application at the same site with the same description was considered at Planning Committee held on the 6th of November last year, which we've already discussed. The committee decided to refuse the application on the grounds that the access to the site from Southway had not been suitably designed, with concerns expressed regarding the width of the access for emergency services and refuse vehicles, together with concerns for pedestrian safety whilst accessing the site. The application was subsequently withdrawn prior to a decision being issued. This site plan here shows the application site comprises a parcel of land containing 30 garages situated to the rear of 10 and 12 Southway and accessed via an access drive that runs between these 2 properties. The application site is bounded to the north by numbers 8 and 10 Southway and 10 and 11 Greenway, to the east by 10 and 12 Southway, to the south by 15 to 25 Montague Gardens, and to the west by 10 and 11 Greenway. The application site lies within the Butte Road Estate Area of Special Local Character, the boundary of which runs along the southern boundary of the application site. This photo is taken from the Southway Highway looking southwesterly along the access between 10 and 12 Southway. This is the access into the site. The photo on the left here is taken from the access looking northeasterly out of the site towards the Southway Highway. The photo on the right looking the opposite direction into the main development area. The photo on the left is taken from within the site at the end of the access, looking towards the western end of the site. And the photo on the right is from the same position, looking towards the south, an existing substation that will remain unchanged. This drawing shows the proposed layout of the site. The proposed residential terrace block will be centrally located within the site, with the front of the dwellings facing the rear gardens of the Southway and Greenway properties to the north, and the rear elevation of the properties facing the rear gardens of Montague Gardens. This shows the proposed front elevation, the top drawings there, the terrace. The proposed Muse-style terrace arrangement would be 2 stories with a pitched roof formation finished in brick. The terrace would appear subordinate but not out of proportion within the surroundings, and it's considered that the overall footprint of the arrangement would be appropriate within the site context. It's acknowledged that the contemporary design of these houses introduces a new architectural style to the area, but this is in effect a backland site which does not form part of a recognised street frontage. As such, there's greater flexibility to deliver a more innovative solution. The use of a single material in the elevations reflected to match the established materiality on neighbouring dwellings. This slide shows the proposed external finishes of the dwellings and a 3D image of the front elevation of the terrace. The proposed external material on the elevations is a high quality handmade Karma white brick, which would create a uniform appearance within the terrace and generally improve the appearance, given it currently appearing as an underused parcel of land. This slide, the drawing at the top, this shows the rear elevation. Each dwelling would have solar PV panels on the rear roof slope. The floor plans of the dwellings, each dwelling has the same layout. The layout of the proposed dwellings is such that they will all meet the Mayor's space standards, both internally and for outdoor amenity space, and all the habitable rooms would receive adequate levels of light and ventilation, as well as have adequate outlook. The proposal would provide 4 car parking spaces opposite houses 4 and 5 to the northwest of the site, and 1 space between the amenity area of house 1 and the existing substation to the east of the site. In total, 1 parking space per dwelling will be provided. This is in line with the council's restraint-based maximum standards. Hard and soft landscaping would be incorporated throughout the site, which includes permeable concrete surfacing for the parking spaces and pockets of soft landscaping, which includes trees and hedges. The proposal will require removal of 1 tree and 1 group of trees. The council's tree officer has no objection. Refuse storage would be provided opposite the dwellings along the northern boundary. Houses 1 and 5 would have cycle parking within the gardens, and houses 2, 3 and 4 would have cycle parking storage provisions sited along the eastern boundary. A half a metre segregated pedestrian occupied path would be provided within the access route along the boundary with 12 Southway. A 1.8 metre high timber boundary fence treatment would be erected across the entire application site. In land use terms, the loss of the garages is acceptable. A change of use to residential is acceptable on a brownfield site in a residential location. Since the application was last seen at Planning Committee, a highway safety assessment has been undertaken of the highway network within the immediate vicinity of the application site. The highway safety assessment concludes that there are no existing highway network road safety issues to preclude the development of the application site, and that the application site demonstrates cognizance of the national and local design guidance, and the highway design and layout accords with the Manual for Streets and London Borough Sutton residential design guidance. The safety assessment also demonstrates that the proposal would have no significant road safety impact upon the local Wallington highway network or for occupiers of and visitors to the development. The design and layout incorporates a carriageway designed to ensure that vehicle speeds do not exceed 20 miles an hour, vehicle turning space to ensure that all vehicles may access and egress the site curtilage within forward gear, and all servicing requirements, including access by ambulances, are wholly accommodated with agreed servicing activity from Southway for refuse collection fire tenders. At the committee meeting in November, the committee decided to refuse the previous application on the grounds that the access to the site from Southway had not been suitably designed, providing an inadequate width for access by emergency services and refuse vehicles, and concerns for pedestrian safety whilst accessing the site. The subsequent safety assessment has demonstrated that there are no highway network road safety issues, and the proposed road safety measures would ensure pedestrian safety when entering and leaving the site. These measures include 2 vertical speed reducing features, suitable surface material for the driveway to enhance its shared use function, this being for both vehicles and by foot and wheelchair, and street lighting to ensure the driveway is illuminated when dark. These details will be approved by the council prior to occupation of the development, including the surfacing material to be used for the driveway and how the delineation between the half a metre pedestrian path and the vehicle access will be demonstrated to show its shared use, such as using different coloured paving and ensuring surfaces avoided that suggest a more vehicular function. In addition, emergency services and refuse vehicles would not need to enter the site. All servicing requirements, including access by ambulances, are wholly accommodated with agreed servicing activity from Southway for both refuse collection and fire tenders. Thank you, Chair. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any technical questions on the application itself? Yeah, Councillor Allen.
Thank you. One of the issues we had is the collection of refuse from the site. We have at least 3 bins per property. We're talking about the bins being stored some 40 metres from the pavement, where bins are normally left for collection. Based on the fact that there are 5 properties and a minimum of 3 bins, even if you allow for the operator from Viridor actually taking 1 bin back and bringing back another bin at the same time, still accounts for 12 trips up and down that driveway at a distance of 40 metres each. Is 480 metres times 3. It's basically 1.5 kilometres of walking which has to be done to bring those bins down every week. Over and above that, we've got bumps in the road as well, which have got to be manoeuvred over. I can see what will happen here is that what happens everywhere else in this borough is that the contractors will basically just discard the bins at the end of the road and won't take them back. Now, what guarantees do we have from Viridor that they're actually going to do this? This is one of the main reasons we rejected it the last time, was the lack of the ability of a collection truck to go up that road. So can we have some assurances of what is actually happening here, please?
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Shall I come in, Chair, on that? So, Councillor Allen, answer your question. We've been in contact with our refuse team on this point, and they've assured us that the site will be serviced from the access point, and they've got a contractual agreement with the housing team that they will actually service the bins, walk up the access path and wheel them to the vehicle and wheel this back to the actual vehicle itself. So this has been confirmed, and this will be guaranteed as part of the application if it is granted tonight and constructed. I just wanted to note that this is not a new sort of servicing measure which the council does. There are various sites in the borough where this has happened as well in close proximity. And from the officer who gave comments, Beggars Roost Lane off Grove Road, they do the same thing. Hannah's Mews off Blenheim Gardens, and also 7A Ross Parade in Wallington. Similar process actually is undertaken there. That answers that question, Councillor Allen.
Well, are we going to get, you actually say they've assured you that they'll do it, but they also assure us that they're going to collect bins from people who need assistance, that they're going to return bins to the pavement or outside the customer's property. These assurances do not stand up. What do we have? Do we have a written guarantee that this will happen? And if they fail to do it, what actions can be taken against them for failing to carry out the agreement?
I mean, just on that point, I mean, we've been given assurances from the waste team and Viola. They've been contacted in regards to the servicing of the site. They've given us assurances that this will happen. Just looking at the conditions list, there is conditions in terms of the details of the refuse, I believe, just going to the conditions.
Okay, Gavin, while you look at that,
sorry.
It's fine. I know lots of people want to come in, but Councillor Shields has got a question on the rubbish collection. So can I skip a few of you and go back to you, because Councillor Shields has got a question on the same issue?
Well, yes. When the fortnightly collections were brought in with much controversy and the new collection regime, etc., elderly people, had to trundle their waste down to the end of their front garden, and there was no mercy shown. Yet all of a sudden, our contractor can now go marching, as Eric Allen said, Councillor Allen says, a kilometre worth of collections just to satisfy a planning application. Can you tell me how many of my residents can benefit from this new premium service that's just been unveiled tonight?
I mean, I think just coming to Councillor Shields is a question here. I think every application is considered on its own merits and the servicing needs of that site. This is a servicing need which is required for this site because the site is not able to actually have a vehicle entering into the site itself. Viola has given the applicant and the planning department assurances that this would be the servicing. They don't do it for all sites, but where there is restrictions in place and you can't access the site properly, this service is available. And as I said to you when answering the question with Councillor Allen, there are various sites in the borough where this actually happens already.
Okay. But is that not just the epitome of bad planning? If it has to have special consideration for just getting the bins emptied, does that not just trigger a little something in all of us to go, well, perhaps the site's not tenable?
Okay. Well, I suppose you've got to balance the pros and cons. I mean, if you think the negatives of the potential missing of bins outweighs the benefit of the scheme, then when it comes to the vote, that's perfectly fine for you to weigh up the issues that way. But do we have an answer for Councillor Allen before we move on to some of the other issues about the site?
Another point I want to make on my question as well is that...
Yeah, Councillor Allen, sorry, do you want to wait and see if we've got an answer from Gavin first on that first question you've got, then you can raise the second one?
Well, it's relevant to the question I've asked. The point is that I've identified the fact that what you're talking about is that you're going to have 3 trips of half a kilometre each time. The bin truck is going to have to park, probably double parked in the road. It's going to take them a considerable amount of time to walk backwards and forwards with these bins. It's actually going to cause basically traffic congestion within that area 3 times every 2 weeks as they collect these bins. So has that been factored in as well?
This one, then I'll move on to some of the other issues.
We've got Nick on the line who can answer the sort of safety issues in terms of the actual road network. Nick?
Yes, as far as the road network is concerned, the developer has submitted the transport statement. We've looked at that in detail. We are happy that the impact on the both on the public highway and within the development site itself is acceptable. I think, as what's been said, the waste management team are willing to collect the waste from the access road, and we're happy with those arrangements.
Yeah, I think enough information on that issue that members can make a decision one way or the other when it comes to the vote. But so what we'll do, I think, now is move on to some of the issues that councillors want to raise. So Councillor Gallagher, I think, is the first one on my list.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit of the same, I'm afraid. I mean, the problem before was about access. I agree with everything that Councillor Allen has brought up as being a problem. When I went round there the other day, Southway is a very difficult little road. It's not that wide. It's on a bend, permanent bend. Loads of cars parked out. I would have had trouble, I think, where cars were parked to try and get in to the site. Walking up the opening into the garage site, I mean, there's no way, I think, that IKEA lorry is going to get up there, or just an ordinary, furniture van. I'm not quite sure what they're sort of measuring as being acceptable, because there's a curve either side, and are they working that in between the curb is a distance that might work, or is it sort of they're taking out the curb and it's going to be from the fence to the wall? And by the time you put in something that's wide enough for wheelchair access, which I think it's about 20 inches wide that they put in, which I don't think is wide enough for wheelchair access, So I do find access in and out. Now, what happens when suddenly somebody arrives to come in and somebody's already started to go out? Trying to reverse out onto the road in between all the cars. I still don't think that the access is going to work, to be honest with you. And the point that Councillor Allen made about, is people buying the place, moving in, is their furniture van going to sit there in the middle of the road blocking it for half a day?
Okay, I think you've raised quite a few questions about the access for things other than refuse. I think we're going to let officers answer on that, but I think don't want to stray too far into debate at this stage because we've got quite a lot of people with questions and we've got speakers from residents as well. So, Gavin, do you want to, or anyone, do you want to come back on just this issue of wheelchair access and the access point and things like deliveries and things like that?
Yes, I can come back on that, Chair. Yes, regarding the access to the site, large lorries, it's considered that the frequency of very large lorries and deliveries, well, it would be very infrequent because there are such a small number of properties there and such a small number of vehicular movements. We don't consider that a very occasional large lorry access, such as a removal van, is going to be, enough to cause concern. So basically, because of the frequency of it, that is considered acceptable. In terms of the overall width of the drive, the issues that have been raised, it is quite narrow at the moment. As has been said, there's curbs on either side. Those would be removed and you would end up with a fully shared surface. The surface would be almost 3.5 metres wide, which does give sufficient space for a wheelchair, cyclist, buggy to pass a vehicle. As has been said, there is the treatment that will be undertaken within the road to heighten awareness of pedestrian cyclist activity. So given that overall width, we consider that the arrangement is acceptable. Granted that if two cars are obviously one trying to get in, one trying to get out, then again, due to the frequency of movements along the road, it may happen very occasionally, but given the nature of the area and generally how quiet the roads are around there, then again, that is not considered to be a significant risk. I hope that's covered the key points. Quite happy to pick up on anything else.
Cool, thank you. I think we'll move on to another question from Councillor Haldane, if that's okay. Councillor Haldane?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, because it would help me, if officers could, for ease, just spell out exactly what is different in this application to the last one, if that's appropriate.
Is that in terms of the access road, presumably? If so, the package of measures has been put forward, particularly for the access road, but also an assessment of the wider highway network. So the package of measures with the surface treatment, the speed humps to slow down traffic, heighten awareness of any potential conflict between vehicular and pedestrian movement, the full assessment of the emergency access, and also the waste management plan, which we've talked about as well. So from the highways, those are the key differences.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
I too, probably debating time, I have serious concerns about this width issue. Just under 3.5 metres, take away a metre, which is a reasonable amount of space for somebody to be wheeling a wheelchair, and you're talking something that a delivery van wouldn't get past. and given what's happening in society today, there's a lot of delivery vans. Now, but my query is, where on the map is the fire hydrant?
Shut up. Do the officer have it on is it on one of the slides? Does someone know?
Ben, is it possible to bring up the presentation, please? Can you point it out, Ben, on the actual plan?
Sorry, I just turned the mic off. So this drawing here shows.
So Ben, I think we've lost you. Okay, I think while we're waiting for the IT issue to resolve itself, we'll take Councillor Garringer's question, but I'll make sure we come back to you, Councillor Foster, if that's okay. Councillor Garringer?
Yeah, thank you very much. How many independent assessments have we had about the access way? I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? This is the London Borough of Sutton application, and of course we're getting the London Borough of Sutton waste people saying there's no problem. Now, I mean, you know, so how many independent people? I mean, what about the police, the fire brigade, the ambulance people? You know, we've had correspondence from neighbours, which are very critical of this access way. So I'd like to know a little bit more about this, please.
Okay, so that's the consultee comments, I imagine, from emergency services and things. Ben, have you? Oh, Ben's.
I mean, so specifically since the last refusal, there was the highway assessment conducted, which.
Keep going again.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, Chair. Who did the highways assessment? The London Borough of Sutton or some external people?
I think the
I could come in on that. There was an external highways transport assessment which was commissioned, and that has been assessed by ourselves at the London Borough of Sutton.
So we assessed it.
Sutton Highways have assessed the transport submission, which looked at both the on-site and off-site transport and highway implications of this development, with significant new submissions in comparison to previous submissions, particularly in the areas of the access road itself, emergency access. Waste recycling access as well.
I'm going to ask an important question here. If this went to appeal, do you think the inspectors would allow it, or do you think they'd reject it because of the access way?
Well, we believe that the access is acceptable now because of the mitigation measures that have been put in place, which are quite comprehensive, suitable for the width of access road that we're talking about, and obviously accounting for the relatively small number of properties that we're talking about here. So when you weigh up the level of intervention and the overall vehicular and pedestrian movement. So, for example, during a peak hour, 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, traffic generation from a site like this, you'd expect to be about 2 vehicles.
Mitigations from the London Borough of Sutton or mitigations from elsewhere? I just worry about this. That the London Borough of Sutton is trying to push this thing through because it's their development.
Okay, well, I think we'll take the comment. We're going to move on to. I'm going to go back. Gavin, can you show us from the slide that's on at the moment where the hydrant is to answer Councillor Foster's question? Because I know Ben's having a bit of trouble connecting.
Yes, so it's just just in terms of the fire safety for all the dwellings as well. I think it should be noted that there's a sprinkler system as well, like within all the houses. That's the first point in terms of the fire hydrant. But the fire hydrant would be towards the sort of access, towards the actual neck of at the end of the actual drive. So where you see the actual lines actually angling out, that's where the fire hydrant would be positioned in that location there.
Okay, Councillor. So that's Councillor Foster's question. Councillor Foster, do you want to come back on that?
So, yeah. So what we're saying is that there isn't a fire hydrant there at the present time.
Not at the present time, no. But as part of the application, there will be.
But I am right in saying that in their submission and the use of a 90-metre hose that they indicated they had to have, they need that there, and the fire engine just to the, as we look at the map, just to the, what would be the north side of the entrance. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, yeah.
So if someone's parked there, or if we can't locate the fire hydrant properly, we're stuck.
In terms of what issue? In terms of traffic impact you're talking about here?
We're talking about a mitigation. We've already heard that there's special deals with Veolia, even though they haven't got a 25-year contract. We're now talking about a fire mitigation where we have to have the fire engine in a particular place connected to a fire hydrant that doesn't yet exist in order to pass this. I'm just, if we were talking, I mean, I have a fire hydrant outside my house. I know, you know, the fire point. I know exactly where it is, and so does everybody in the area. But this is making it up as you go a long time, isn't it?
I mean, the fire service would know where these hydrants are located once they're in. No? Kevin?
I can come in on that point. The fire service has been consulted. They've looked at this closely and are happy that it is within the 90 metres. They must have looked as well at potential positioning of hydrants and where the fire vehicle would stop. If there is no room to pull in, the fire vehicle would simply stop in the highway, and if that was to block traffic temporarily, well, then that would obviously be the case while the fire is dealt with. Traffic would obviously have to wait, but that is a very infrequent emergency situation.
Okay, can I just ask when the condition for the fire hydrant, when does that have to be put in? Is it prior to building or prior to occupation?
It would be prior to the commencement. Well, it'd be prior to occupation, but they would have to bring it when they're doing the servicing of the actual site itself. So it would be prior to occupation when they're doing the servicing of the actual existing site.
Okay. Councillor Shields, I think, do you have a separate fire hydrant question?
Well, yes, I do. Hold on. Here we are. You can see me on my beauty. Yes, I do. Much mitigation has been offered through a fire hydrant being fitted, but you forget I'm a retired fireman, and I spent the last 10 years attached to the Red Watch at Sutton, and I'm very pleased that I did. And I have never, ever in my firefighting career fought a fire in the domestic premises powered by a street hydrant, some 90 metres away from the fire engine, whose job it is to take water from a street hydrant, propel it, amplify it, and project it onto a fire. This is comedy stuff as far as a firefighter is concerned as mitigation. There is no way a crew would commit themselves to a fire parked in the street, and I accept what the gentleman said about it blocking the street. The blocking the street's not a problem if you've got a fire engine and a fire. That's no sweat. the crew would need to commit down the alleyway in breathing apparatus, hauling hoses, because they could not rely on a fire hydrant to give a ample supply for crews committed in a fire situation. You must have a pump, you must have the ability to control the flow of water to save lives for a potential for residents and the crew that you commit them yourselves. When you commit a crew in breathing apparatus into a fire situation, you must have due satisfaction that they are operating in the safest environment possible. Putting a fire hydrant down here, I can't say what it's quite like. It's like putting wheels on a tomato. It is totally irrelevant. There is no way a pump can pump or get down there to actually produce and impart power to the water. This, I think probably the whole planning department need a little lesson in basic firefighting to see what's required to actually end up squirting water on a fire at a significant distance without a fire engine, because they are intrinsic to the job. This is entirely wrong, and it leads me to the question, that is, so a sprinkler system is employed, fine. Where is the tank system? How is the positive pressure being charged? How will it be maintained? And how, if maintenance falls, can the London Fire Brigade, of which I was once a member, possibly be expected to give the shortfall, given the half marathon they would have to run in breathing apparatus to save lives?
Okay, I don't know if any officers can respond to the particular points on the fire issue.
I think, Councillor Shields, I acknowledge the comments you raised tonight in terms of the fire safety and also how fires will be put out in terms of property. As Nick has said, the application has been assessed by the fire brigades and they've given their comments in regards to this application. We can only follow advice which they've given to us in terms of this. In terms of your comments about the sprinkler system, we've got the applicant here in terms of how that will operate and be maintained as well. So when the applicant is on to actually give their feedback on this application, I think we can ask them that question.
Okay, I think that's sensible. They'll probably have a better idea of the level of detail that you require, Councillor Shields. Is that okay?
Well, I would like. Well, I suppose it's fair warning for the applicant, who is indeed the London Borough of Sutton, to come on with this. The stall that's being put on a fire hydrant being put down the end of a long alleyway, which is totally inaccessible to a fire engine, is a misnomer. We are barking up the wrong tree. We are misinforming ourselves, and we are the applicant. I'll say no more.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think we're going to move on. I don't think we've got any particular questions left on this part of the agenda. What we will do now is move to members of the, well, actually, first of all, we've got any questions on the written statements that were submitted. We've got 2 for this application. I'll give a couple of seconds for any members to indicate on the chat function if you've got questions on those. No? Okay, so what we'll do now is move to the speakers for this item. I believe we've got an objector, so Mr. Phillips, Vern Phillips on this. Yeah. Do you want to just test your microphone? I think you're on mute at the moment. No, we can't hear you yet. I'm afraid we can't unmute you from this end either. Okay, I think, Mr. Phillips, what we might do is we might take a short, maybe a 2-minute break and let IT and committee services come to Oh, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we've got you.
All right. Okay. So my
Thank
name
you.
is.
Okay, so just so you know that what will happen is once you start speaking, you'll have 4 minutes to address the committee, and then so I'll let you know when that's up. And if it's okay, we might have some questions from councillors for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Cheers.
Okay. Hi, my name's Vern Phillips. I live at number 12 Southway. I speak on behalf of the residents of Southway, given that only one person can speak. The numerous concerns include the stress of additional parking will cause, the negative effect on the trees, wildlife in the area, hedgehogs, foxes, birds, etc. The effect of privacy on privacy for the residents, noise and air pollution. However, the main concern is around safety. The alleyway serving this area has a curb-to-curb measurement of 2.8 metres and a fence-to-fence measurement of 3.3 metres. With the enormous increase in the volume of cars, delivery vans and pedestrians, how can this be safe? I will say that you were talking about removing the curbs and putting a kind of painted in pedestrian zone. With that kind of space and with the kind of speed that some Amazon drivers deliver at, there is no way that I would let a child, you know, or my daughter who's disabled, push her in a wheelchair down that alleyway. Right, okay. Even with the proposed speed humps, young children, including our disabled daughter, could easily be in the alleyway when a vehicle enters. Where would they safely go in this event? In the event of an emergency such as a fire, how would emergency vehicles with potential casualties enter and exit the scene safely and speedily? We understand that a fire engine will park on the main road and hoses will run down the alleyway. Again, how do emergency vehicles navigate this with safety and speed? Also, the weekly refuse collection vehicles will block Southway for a considerable amount of time while the bins are wheeled up and down the alleyway. This will cause huge congestion. Also, during construction of this development, there will be a huge disturbance on Southway for all the residents. Parking will have to be suspended outside the properties adjacent to the alleyway because of restricted access. Given the narrowness of the road, how will large vehicles during construction safely enter and exit such a narrow space? How will these vehicles turn in the site? For some time, large vehicles will have to reverse out of this tiny access. Moreover, the loss of parking at the rear of the properties and loss of garages is detrimental to my business. It is inevitable that that for some time during construction, there will be a loss of access to the front and rear properties of our house. We have a disabled daughter who has Prader-Willi syndrome and severe scoliosis. She is also autistic. She cannot walk for long periods, and she often has the use of a wheelchair. We have steps at the front of our house, so we will not be able to access the property if Mia is asleep in the wheelchair. Also, if we can't park near our house, this will be cause significant difficulty for Mia. I'd also like to say that, you know, as far as I'm concerned and the residents are concerned, I think you're building another Grenfell, because I can't see how you're going to be able to build those houses. And,
so your 4 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you very much for that. Before we go to member questions, we normally skip back to officers just to come back on any points that are raised during your 4 minutes. So, Gavin, do you want, or Ben, do you have?
Chairman, I'll have a break
first. Let's deal with questions for the member. Take a break before Councillor Lewis. Yeah. So we shouldn't be. Yeah, Gavin, do you want to come back on anything?
Yeah. So in terms of the width of the access way, I mean, obviously that's been tested through the safety assessment by the applicant. And there is adequate sort of width for one Amazon driver to go down there in terms of servicing those residents in terms of deliveries. And also there is potentially for emergency vehicles to actually go down there. I acknowledge that they won't be able to go down in speed because obviously there will be speed bumps at the beginning and towards the end of the site. So there will be precautions in place to actually mitigate any speed also. In terms of the access way, it's going to be improved. There's going to be a shared access, which would have a shared pavement as well. And given the frequency of vehicles down there, it will be reduced drastically to what's currently there at the moment, because there's 30 garages and technically there could be a large portion of vans and cars which could use that site. This site would only provide 5 houses with potentially 5 spaces. So in terms of congestion and traffic down that lane, it would be reduced drastically from what is currently existing at the moment. And in terms of construction vehicles and construction impacts, condition 17 of the actual committee report on page 76 states there will be a condition which would mitigate and restrict how the site would be constructed and would be controlled. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I just come back on so this condition for like this, the construction logistics plan, etc. Can you give some like concrete examples of how, for example, a construction vehicle would use the site if it was like a large one? I know Mr. Phillips raised that as an issue.
Yeah, I can come in on that. The site would be subject to a construction logistics plan. We would require sight of the full details from the developer of exactly how he's going to access the site, what type of vehicles could be used. It's quite common, this type of access, in terms of the width of the vehicle that would be used. There have actually been narrower accesses where smaller construction vehicles would actually be required to get into the site. So it would be down partly to the developer to determine the type of vehicle that he would use. But as I say, there have been certainly narrower accesses where similar types or larger developments have successfully been constructed. We wouldn't sign off the construction logistics plan without being satisfied.
Okay, Councillor Foster has a question on just going back on something Gavin said, I think. Councillor Foster?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit brave what Gavin just said about this low amount of traffic because there's only 5 houses. Your own documentation says there's only 7 cars in those garages, 19 are empty and 4 are used for storage. So it's hardly Piccadilly Circus, is it, right now? And I think that if you take it that last time we met, we talked about a similar back development with a narrow access, and there was a fire riser for fire protection and a separate agreement about residents and management of the waste. We're making it up as we go along. And coming back to your thing, we just heard from Mr. Phillips about the width of that space. And if we just talk about the way that people drive, they are going to leave, let us say, 6 inches to one side of their car or I don't know that in maybe 10 centimetres, you've got about if you're wheeling a wheelchair, you're not going to scrub your arm along the back along the brick wall. You haven't got enough width there. Fact.
Yeah. No,
Can I come back on that point, Chair? Just for clarification. The actual garages can be used for storing of building material or could be furniture. So there could be 30 different owners, say for example, going down there with vehicles. So in terms of the actual traffic flow and the amount of use of those garages would be much more than currently, which has been proposed as part of this application. I think that's the point I was trying to make. It doesn't necessarily have to be used by cars which are stored in the garage. It could be used by vans, used by cars, basically, who are going to use those garages to store stuff which are not actually stored for actual vehicles. So in terms of traffic use on that site currently, it would be much higher than what is currently being proposed. That's the point I was trying to get across there.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Phillips?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, Councillor Harding.
Mr. Phillips, in your opinion, is this second application any improvement on the last?
No, it's not. And to answer the previous statement, the garages have been run down, so the roofs leak, so and the rent is quite high. So basically, that people are not renting those garages. I live adjacent, I'm at number 12, the house that is right on the entrance, and very few vehicles use those garages, to the point where I'm quite kind of more or less happy to let my daughter sort of walk out there and know that she's not going to come to any harm. I don't believe that putting 5 houses down there with, they're going to have more than 5 cars because, husband has a car, wife has a car. If they've got any kids and they're of that age, they'll have a car. And then the Amazon drivers, etc., the takeaways, etc., there will be a lot more traffic going up and down that road.
Well, thank you. And Councillor Garinger also has a question for you, Mr. Phillips. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask Mr. Phillips? I mean, how many people do you represent in your rows or any other roads regarding this matter? Have you had any conversations, and what have they been saying about this?
Well, I think all the residents are concerned about it. None of the residents want it. All the residents think that the access is too small. They're concerned about the overflow of parking is going to be on Southway. We're also concerned about the safety aspect of it. Like if a fire engine blocks one end of Southway and an ambulance comes from the wrong direction, then the ambulance has to go round to get round the fire engine, and then they have to drive over hoses that are run down the alleyway. It's a nonsense.
Well, thank you. Councillor Garinger, did you have any follow-up to that?
No follow-up to that. Thank you.
Sure. No, thank you. I don't think we've we're back again on YouTube. Welcome back to those of you watching on that. We're going to move now on to the next part of the business on this agenda item, which is hearing from the ward councillor, and we've got Councillor Barry Lewis here to speak. Good evening, Councillor.
Good evening, and good evening, everybody. Evening, Chair. Evening, everybody.
So same as before, you're going to have 4 minutes. In fact, you've got a little bit over 4 minutes because Mr. Phillips spoke a bit longer to address the committee, and then any questions from committee members, I'll then pass over to you, if that's okay.
That's fine. I'm going to be very brief, actually. You've seen my statement, and I don't think there's any need to repeat what's in it. The main concerns are access and safety, and I think they've been voiced clearly by Mr. Phillips, and they were also raised in the question period earlier. I'm happy to try and answer any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Succinct.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Lewis? Councillor Garringer. Was that? Oh no, sorry, that was from earlier on, wasn't it? Sorry. So I'll give you. Oh, Councillor Haldane.
I already asked my question. I think you're catching up.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Haldane.
Councillor Lewis, in your opinion, is there any development on this particular site that would be acceptable given the access issues?
It is a complex site, and it's got a very narrow access route. I'm not an expert. I'm not a road traffic engineer. I'm not a fireman. So we can only go on, to some extent, the information that's been given by the professionals. I certainly have concerns over the development. I don't think I could say there's no development that would be suitable. It's not the development that's the problem. It is the access that does raise some concerns.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? I mean, one thing I was going to ask was about.
I do have a small one, actually.
Go on.
How about allotments?
Okay, I mean, I would probably say that issue at the moment is that, like all planning applications, we have to assess the ones that is before us rather than coming up with our own schemes. Allotments are always nice, but that's not the question we've got here before us this evening. Councillor Whitehead.
Yes, we've talked a lot about car use and it being implicated in access. If car use was to reduce, which it has been recently, on a permanent basis, would this change matters, or do you think that it will stay the same, or car use will in fact increase? Because we are talking about pre and post COVID rather than a change which is caused by COVID. So that might be an unforeseen implication.
I think it's probably not the car use that is the problem. The maximum, there are only 5 car parking spaces on the site, and I don't think there will be room for any more cars to park up there if they parked sort of where they shouldn't. The problem is access from deliverers, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Amazon, etc., which are the main problems, and the frequency of those, amongst 5 houses can be quite significant.
Cool. No, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Councillor Lewis? No, it doesn't look like we do. So I was going to say thank you for being here this evening and for waiting for so long before being called to speak. And if you could log off now, you'll be able to follow the rest of it on YouTube.
Thank you all. Good night.
I think Councillor Shields is indicating that he wants to ask a question.
Oh, sorry. I think that was sorry, Councillor Shields. I thought you were responding to something else you put in the chat. Do you want to bring our question in now?
Just short, and I think it's something that's not just for this application, it's for many applications in the future. We don't know what they will be. Councillor Lewis is spot on. If Councillor Whitehead is right that cars will reduce, then delivery vans will increase. That is the yin to the yang. It really is. Tight spot deliveries, and we all know this goes on. This goes on in every one of our homes every day. Deliverers that are literally screeching to a halt, charging out of their van, dumping whatever it is on your driveway, in, out. I wouldn't say shake it all about, but you know, the actual veracity of delivery drivers is something quite amazing, because they're on the clock, they're driving fast, they're driving large vehicles, they're trying to earn a living. We understand why they're doing it, but to think this development would just blend in, and Councillor Lewis is spot on. Even if there's no cars, there will be multiple deliveries per property per day, and I think we're being a little bit naive not to consider that as part of our deliberation.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a, you can raise that again when we come to debate. Do you have a particular question on that issue to Councillor Lewis?
Okay then, Councillor Lewis, you mentioned that you noticed that there's lots of Amazon and Uber delivery vans. Would you like to expand on that, please?
I think it obviously shows there's possibly a need for councils, governments to engage with the delivery firms to make sure drivers are trained, to make sure that they're getting a fair wage, so that they don't have to, drive at breakneck speed in order to complete their quota.
Fair comment.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, I think that is the last question for Councillor Lewis. So thank you very much for coming this evening, and we're sure we'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, thank you. So that is Councillor Lewis's section over. We now have the applicants with us, and we've got Mr. Henley, who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant and agent. So, Mr. Henley, welcome to the committee. You'll have 4 minutes, and I think it's 4 minutes and 25 seconds. Mr. Phillips had, and then once you've finished, we'll have some questions for you, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Councillor Heffernan, and all others here today. I'll just briefly describe the proposal and give a few clarifications on some of the points that have been raised. So this is part of a wider scheme with Sutton Housing Partnership on underused sites across the borough. Many of the sites have garages on them, such as this one, and they're considered a poor use of land in this day and age when most cars are waterproof, so you don't need garages. And kind of generally what is going to happen with this site, I would say that houses on the area would be a considered improvement on that condition. And I think the planning officers have agreed with that. Just to review the design of the houses, it's a terrace of homes, a single terrace over 2 stories, much like the other properties in the area. There's a contemporary brick used, a handmade brick of high quality, and they also have chimneys in the design which naturally ventilate the properties and further tie the scheme into the language of the area. So although this has not been specifically raised so far, that there have been comments on do the designs fit, and I think they overwhelmingly do. The houses around there are brick built, some with rendered finishes, others with half timbered finishes, but mainly they're 2-story terraced homes of 4 and 5 properties. They're also set back from the road, these houses, in any case, so the effect on that street scene, I think, would be relatively limited in any case. And that they are set some 20-30 meters away from neighboring properties, so amenity and views are protected. But I think transport is really the matter we're here to discuss, and those points have been raised as they were last time. We've gone away and replanned things from that side, and I think Dan's going to give more detail on those proposals. Dan Wallace of Sutton Housing Partnership. But I just want to come in with a few clarifications, because some of the things that are said, I think thus far, it's not really facts, and I just find that we really need to stick to those things, and actually that then we can make a fair judgment. So delivery vans, as we know, are between 1.9 and 2.2 meters in width. This road is going to be 3.46 meters wide when the curbs are removed at this narrowest point, and it goes up to 3.5. So that still leaves you with 1.5 meters on either side. And I also think it's unlikely that you're going to get that situation where a delivery van is actually going to try and drive past someone who's walking down there with a wheelchair or not. So, and of course there's the speed bumps, which are going to slow anyone quite significantly. So this picture that's painted again of a delivery driver slamming on the accelerator, I think is, it's just misleading. Then onto the bins, and there are 5 bins here, and they are to be dragged 40 meters each, and they have to be pulled twice, as they say. So 5 times 80, that's 400 meters, and not the 2 kilometer figure that's been cited before. And when you think of actually that there's probably at least 2 people in the bin team, that's 200 meters each. So, that's really quite misleading, that sort of information. And then onto the fire hydrant. And I can't speak about the councillor's experience on the fire service, and it's good to hear about that. But the fire hydrant is going to be at the entrance, as has been explained, not in the site itself, so that there's just have clarity on that. And I think the fire service have looked at this in detail. They've looked in 2 consultations and they've passed it as fine. And there are sprinklers in these houses. So there was another, Grenfell is referenced, which...
Okay, thank you.
Is respectful, I think, to that situation. And I'll leave it to Dan to explain further on the car parking situation. But thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Shields has got a question. Oh, no, sorry. Councillor Foster came in first. No.
Yeah, it was a question for Mr. Henley. Do you live in the London Borough of Sutton?
I do not. I do not. I live in the London Borough of Southwark.
Where I do live in the London Borough of Sutton, I have a green bin for recycling. I have a brown bin. That's 2. I have a box for recyclable materials, and I have a kitchen disposal, and I also pay, because I'm allowed to, for garden waste. So your 5 houses, 5 bins is a little bit of an underestimate for what is going to happen. And in fact, I think that Councillor Allen's estimate is probably the underestimate.
Okay, thank you. Taylor's comment. I think the bin issue has been talked about quite a lot tonight. I think we've got enough information to make a decision either way on that. I'm afraid I missed off Councillor Allen when I pointed Councillor Foster. I apologise. Do you want to raise your question?
Yeah, it was just a correction. When you talked about the bins and said 5 bins, it's actually 10, because every bin that goes down has to come back as well. So you're talking
that was in my
just
calculation, but that's by the by, I guess.
Okay.
So when you start to add that up, you're still coming back to roughly 1.5 kilometres to do the 3 bins.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think we can all do. We've covered this issue, and I don't think any further questions would add any clarity to the issue we've already got. If you feel it's going to be too much to service, then you can vote a certain way. If you don't, then you can vote the other way. I don't want to belabor this particular point much further tonight, because I think we've got enough information on it. Councillor Allen's already asked that question. Do we have any other questions Councillor Shields. Yeah, sorry.
Fair go, Chairman. I understand the difficulties in chairing a committee such as this, where the authority is actually the applicant and the decision taker. So I think we'll move on, shall we?
Okay. So unless we've got any other questions, we can move to the debate portion of the item. I want to thank everyone who's come to speak. So who wants to start the debate?
Question, Councillor.
Councillor Haldane.
Sorry. I wondered if Dan had anything to tell us about the car parking.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, it's Dan Wallace, London Borough of Sutton, project manager. Yes, I'd like to pick up on a couple of points. At the previous application, the key issues that we had were the fire engine access on the road, the refuge, and general traffic safety on the access road. Touching on to the fire aspects, after the last plan application, we consulted with a fire specialist who came up with a number of recommendations. They concluded that in accordance with British Standards 9991, that hydrants can be fitted within 90 metres of the properties. For further guidance, we then made a building regulation application in order to consult with the London Fire Brigade. They came back on the 25th of March this year and confirmed that they're satisfied with the proposals, subject to agreeing the location of the hydrant and further consultation once the sprinkler system details were known. In terms of refuge, I think we've already touched on those issues, but we did meet with Viola. They're undertaking a risk assessment. They've come back and confirmed that they're happy with the proposals. In terms of general safety on the access road, we again appointed an expert highway safety consultant. They produced a report which had sort of 4 recommendations, which the officer's already mentioned. We consulted them with the highway department, and they were in agreement with the proposals.
So that was an independent consultant.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If we've got no other questions, I'm going to ask that the applicant log off from the meeting. You can follow it again if you want to on YouTube. But we're going to move into the debate. Do we have?
Can I have a quick? Sorry, I should have done it. A quick one.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Is there any limit to the amount of cars the owners of these houses can have? I mean, there's spaces, I think, for 1 for each house, but what's to stop them having 2 or 3 and then all of them parking in the road?
Councillor, my understanding is that in accordance with Sutton's policy, is that it's only a single car parking space is needed per 2-bedroom property.
Okay.
Yeah, that may be true, but you know, I mean, you've got neighbours. I mean, a lot of people these days have 2 or 3 cars to a family. So if there's room for just 1 car, where are the others going to park? They're going to park in the road. You can all have houses. So the amount of extra car parking in that road, where through the entrance, past the entrance, could be quite high. They could have lorries, vans, God knows what. Okay, only 1 space per thing, but doesn't mean they can't have several vehicles.
Okay. We could actually look at the Parking Beat survey, which was carried out, and I believe it showed a total of 72% parking stress in that area, which basically equates to, I think, 26 free car parking spaces in and around Southway.
Okay, so Councillor Goings, does that answer your question?
That will do for the moment. Thanks.
Oh, no, thank you. So we are going to move to the debate now. Can I thank Mr. Henley and Mr. Wallace for coming this evening. If you want to log off from the call, we'll then move on to the debate. Councillor Burke wants to start us off.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know I was volunteering for that, but yeah, I'm happy to. I was trying to move us on to the debate rather than discussing car parking and you know, the fact that everybody can have cars, well, we all know that. I think this is difficult from the officer's point of view, and I feel for them because, you know, we're asking the council, not just us, but the mayor and the government are asking for extra houses throughout the country, and we do need them. And officers are doing their level best to provide them in these infill spots across the borough where they can. And it's a difficult, horrible juggling act, and there's always winners and losers. Having said that, and having visited this site and seen the access, I don't think it's suitable for what we're proposing. I just think that the road it's coming off is difficult. It's right on the bend. The narrow access into the site is really, really difficult. And from that point of view, only that point of view, I'm happy with the answers from the fire brigade. I would rely on them knowing what they're doing, you know, as to whether they put a fire out or not. But I'm concerned about the access. So for that reason, I won't be voting for this. I'll be voting against this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foster.
I think I've made my feelings quite clear on issues of access and, quite frankly, the fudge that has brought this application back to us. And just following on for Councillor Haldane's comment about the independent transport assessment, I'd just like to quote the brief that was given to the independent assessor. Brief. The purpose of this highway safety assessment is to demonstrate that the provision of 5 two-bedroom dwellings within the residential development application site, Curtilage, will have no significant highway safety impact upon the local Wallington highway network or occupiers of and visitors to the proposed application site. So the actual brief was to demonstrate that there is no impact. Now, if you're given that brief, you're going to deliver on the brief. It's a fudge like the fire, it's a fudge like the waste. I, along with Councillor Burke, will be voting against it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallagher?
I agree with the councillors who've spoken already. I don't think it's changed that much from when we looked at it seriously before and found that the access was just a bit too difficult. And I'm sure that the measurements that have been given are absolutely accurate. But when I was standing there for the second time, I thought this seems very narrow to me, and didn't think that it would work. So I will be voting against it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Before I bring Councillor Shields, I mean, I visited the site as well. I mean, my view of the access was it was narrow, but it also was quite short. So the visual of someone driving into that would, along with the segregated path, actually would be, in my view, probably safe enough to approve the application. I mean, I think from what we've heard so far, I may be in the minority, but my personal view is actually, even though the access was narrow, it could be safely navigated because you had a full visual from the beginning to the end of it. It's not like a really long, narrow one where cars might be turning randomly into you as you're walking. But that was my personal view. Councillor Shields, you wanted to come in as well?
Yes, please. It is the one thing we can't do in a committee room is lean over and ask Tim Foster where he got the brief from. But if the brief originates from the London Borough of Sutton to actually subvert and paralyze debate, there's something deeply wrong. I mean, we know there's something deeply wrong about this whole application. We know it's deeply wrong about the way the refusal document didn't get offered. I mean, are you, Chairman, are you au fait with the term "there's something rotten in the state of Denmark"? Because this is what's wrong with the planning department. It really is rotten.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haldane. Oh, sorry, no, ignore me. Councillor Allen, I'll come back to you, Councillor Haldane.
Thank you, Chair. I also will be voting against this application. The access is not suitable. The guarantees for the bin is non-existent. We don't know how long Veolia are going to have the contract for. But more important, by my numbers now, there's probably 5, maybe 6 against this application, which means it's going to be turned down. Just how quickly are we going to get the refusal letter sent out this time? Can we get it sent out within a matter of days? And when you do, can you please copy us all in so we can see that the council has actually carried out its role correctly this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait until we've had the other members contribute to debate, but I will get you an answer to the question you've asked. Councillor Whitehead.
I have to say I'm in agreement with the majority of councillors. I'm concerned about narrow access. We have had quite a few planning applications of a similar nature coming up where there is narrow access. And I think we need to think very carefully about this going forward because of the issues it causes.
No, thank you. Councillor Haldane.
Thank you, Chair. I do think that there have been improvements made between the first and second application. I think that was good work. And I know this wasn't really the problem last time, but actually I just think that maybe because the access is so narrow, it's the number of properties that it is delivering access or providing access to. I wonder if maybe it was 2 or 3 dwellings, we might find it more acceptable. But then I suspect that that development would be unviable for the applicant and wouldn't achieve what the council is after in developing the site. I just think there's the balancing it up because yeah, there'll be 5 properties there, and maybe they'll have 1 car, maybe they'll have 2, but they'll have friends coming to visit them and all sorts. And I just think maybe 5 properties using that access and all their friends and all the deliveries and everything else, even with the improvements that have been made, which I think are good, it wouldn't be safe and it's not appropriate given how narrow it is. So I'll be voting against granting permission. But I just want to say, in support of our planning department, I don't think there's anything fishy going on. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes people make mistakes. The person who did it doesn't work for the council anymore, so that's why there's no answer. And actually, there's no implication. There's no, you know, if we refuse, you can have an application refused and then have another submitted as many times as you like. So I mean, it's irrelevant what happened before, and I think it's you know, not something we really need to consider in this instance. And I wonder whether we might be here again in a few months' time with another application that's slightly different, but that remains to be seen, I guess. Thank you, Chair.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Haldane. I'm going to bring in Councillor Garinger, who's the next person who's asked to speak, but I think then we should just move into the vote. I've got a sense from the comments so far about the way it's going to go. So what I'm going to come to some members to ask for reasons for refusal when we've done it. But Councillor Garinger, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I thought about this, and quite frankly, it's a fudge on parking, it's a fudge on bins, it's a fudge on access, and I think it's a danger to pedestrians as well. So I will definitely be voting against.
Okay, thank you. As this, we start this section with Councillor Burke. I'm going to go to him first to see if he wants to draft some reasons for refusal, and then we can then put that to the debate and put that to the vote.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. Can we go back to Gavin and ask, is as this is the council application and it's not going to go to appeal, as I understand it. Perhaps I'm wrong on that. Do we need a draft like we would normally have for refusal? Can I just clarify that before we start?
Yes, members, it'll be the same process as it would be if it was a private developer doing the application. So yeah, it'd be the same sort of reasons as you would do if you were overturning a non-council scheme.
Okay, well, I might ask Councillor Shields, who's got a lot of experience coming on this with me. But basically, I think I see him looking at me. It's the very narrow access. I don't think it's suitable. The plan we were given, I think it said it's like 1/2 metre for a pedestrian access, and I just don't think that's wide enough. The issues about the bin, I think that's very valid. The council have made with the amount of traffic up and down 4 bins, and again, you know, we're not taking into, it doesn't seem to take into consideration at all the amount of traffic that's likely to be going into there. It's not just dwellings, it is deliveries, and especially the way deliveries are going with the current COVID situation. But I don't think that's going to change. People do get more deliveries to their houses, so traffic will increase down there, and I just don't think the site's suitable. I don't know whether you can draft something out of that, but that's my opinions.
Before we do that, I've been informed that actually we need to take a vote on the motion that's on the table at the moment. I know it's going to go the other way, so we can draft the issue now, and then we'll take the 2 votes in succession. So, Councillor Shields, do you want to draft some wording?
Me?
Councillor Burke invited you. I'm going to be voting the other way, so I can't come up with them.
I rather felt Councillor Burke was working himself into a sequence of wording.
You should be paid for this, Tony.
I am, Peter. We all are.
Okay, so we have something about the access. I mean,
allowed.
I'm going to leave 2 members who wish to vote against this application to come up with the reasons why, and they need to have it in a certain way. Maybe Gavin can give some suggestions about how it would be worded to bring in these issues: access, the refuse collection.
So my suggestion would be similar to the reasons given at the last planning committee back in November. I think looking at the minute, it was access to the site from Southway has not been suitably designed. The inadequate width of the driveway for access by emergency services and refuse vehicles, if members see that, has not been overcome. And it seems to me concern for pedestrian safety whilst accessing the site as well. I just wanted to say, Chair, just put on record from this meeting, at the last committee, there was an application at St Albans, which was for a similar development for 5 units, similar access. The access was actually 2.85 metres. This actually provides a wider access to the previous application, and members actually granted that application. I just wanted
no, they didn't. No, majority.
Majority of the members.
So get that right.
Okay, majority of the members granted
it. The votes, like, we act as a committee. I mean, individual voters go the same way, but I think the point that the application was passed is not up for dispute. But I think, can I have views from either Councillor Burke or Councillor Shields or any of the other people who wish to object to the wording that Gavin suggested? Is there anything you would add or take away from that wording?
Can I? Sorry, I was trying to get my screen on. Yes, sorry about that, Chair. I think Gavin's about right. The site and access and the concerns they're greatly concerning for residents. They're greatly concerning for the future enjoyment and occupation of the future residents of this building. I think Councillor Haldane is right that maybe the actual development is a little bit too intense. If it was less properties, there would be less intensification of use of the alleyway, etc., less pedestrian issues. She's, as is often the case, spot on there. But it is access, pedestrian safety, and I think we really need to sort of expand our repertoire somewhat to accept that the modern way of living in a property is to have multiple deliveries per day, which this access way does not facilitate.
Okay, so we want to add delivery vehicles to the list of vehicles mentioned in one of the, I think one of the points mentioned.
I think no one would disagree that delivery vehicles are a profound reality now. They've changed in the last 2 years beyond all recognition. Who knows what the next 2 years will bring?
Okay, so I think, can we add, so Gavin, would that be suitable to add as an extra word on the appropriate line you've got when you spoke earlier?
Okay, and is it the case members want to refuse it on emergency services and refuse vehicles?
And delivery, yeah, and delivery. Then you've got
and
cover Shield's point there.
I think fundamental question about the inadequacy of the mitigation that has been proposed, because there is a similarity, as Gavin's pointed out, to the last one, and one of the issues is that what has been proposed is inadequate, and I think that needs to go into this.
I think the fundamental viability of a modern day setting.
I don't know whether that wording is relevant in planning terms and would stand up, but I think just Foster's point about the inadequate mitigation, I think, could be added to one of the points Gavin raised earlier was on the accessway, and that phrase could possibly go into that section.
What about?
So sorry, Councillor Shields. So I'm looking at the access to the Southway has not been suitably designed. Would I be safe to say inadequate evidence and information has been submitted in terms of access by emergency vehicles, services, and refuse vehicles, and delivery vans? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying, but where does it come from councillors to disagree with the professional brief that this council has paid for to actually make a statement that the site access is acceptable? I think Councillor Foster's absolutely on the money.
I would suggest, Councillor Shields, that would be on the line that Gavin said about inadequate design of the alleyway. That would be, and mitigation that doesn't, inadequate mitigation of safety issues or something like that would be there.
So councillors now know better than the paid professionals that this council has paid to come up with a solution that councillors don't agree with.
I mean, that's what councillors are in. Well, it's up to the committee to decide on whether they accept the information that they receive in the report. You're making a decision on that basis to vote against it. So
I am. I am, but I think we need, before we get any more of the council applying for applications for itself, I think we need to have a good hard look at ourselves of what games we are playing, apparently to be on the side of the public, which clearly in this case we are not, but we've carried on relentlessly.
Okay, we can take that as a point, but I don't think it's necessarily in the wording of the refusal.
So Councillor, sorry. So I would advise members to so the application should be refused. The proposed development, due to the access into the site, is inadequate, and there's lack of evidence to allow delivery and access by emergency vehicles and refuse vehicles, and as such this will cause harm to pedestrian safety entering the site also.
Chairman, we've kind of got to go with that as professional comment, but it's also the same professional comment that was quoting in the absolute opposite and in favour of Grant. I mean, can you see?
Councillor Shields, that always if you're going to vote against officers' recommendations, the points you raise will clearly be the opposite of what officers said, isn't it? That's just a natural feature of voting against.
Well, it's not often officers have got professional guidance to prove their point to be the case.
Yeah, but if you find that you should vote for the application. If you don't, you should vote against it. That is literally how the planning committee system works. and that's the actual. But I'm going to. What we'll do is we'll move to the votes now, 'cause I think the wording. If there's anyone who wishes to propose that this is the wording we accept, is there anyone? What we've got to do first is, I'm going to get straight in my head. We're going to first of all take a vote on the officer's recommendation. Then we'll raise that issue again. I want someone to propose the motion that Gavin's spoken about. Someone to second it, and then we'll take a vote on that. So first of all, Cassie, can I ask everyone to go? Can you ask you to go through the roll call for the officer's recommendation as it currently stands?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So as a reminder, this is for just the officer's recommendation. So please state for, against, or abstain. So Councillor Allen.
Against the officer's recommendations.
Councillor Burke.
Against.
Councillor Clare.
Against.
Councillor Foster.
Against.
Councillor Gallagher.
Against.
Councillor Geringer.
Against.
Councillor Haldane.
Against.
Councillor Shields.
Against.
Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
And Councillor Heffernan.
For.
So that's 1 vote for and 9 votes against.
Thank you. That was quite frequently, actually. And it's normally me. Can we now have someone to propose?
Chairman.
Can I ask someone to propose the motion that we've discussed? And maybe Gavin can. Someone can propose it, and then Gavin can read it out.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose it if Gavin could read it out, please.
Second.
Okay, cool. Gavin, would you mind reading out what you've got, and then we'll make a vote on that motion?
So the proposed development, due to the narrow access to the site on Southway, would be inadequate for vehicles, in terms of emergency vehicles and refuse vehicles, to safely access the sites. And as a result of this, and due to the lack of evidence, there are concerns for pedestrian safety who would use the sites.
Okay, so Cassie, do you mind taking a roll call on that motion?
Yeah,
with
so
Councillor? Yeah, that's right.
A motion for refusal that was proposed by Councillor Burke and seconded by Councillor Shields. So Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Burke.
For.
Councillor Clare.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Gallagher.
For.
Councillor Geringer.
For.
Councillor Haldane.
For.
Councillor Shields.
For.
Councillor Whitehead.
For.
And Councillor Heffernan.
Against.
So that's 9 votes for and 1 vote against.
Okay, thank you very much. So that motion is carried, and the application therefore is refused. Can I quickly come back to Councillor Allen's point about the timescales for this notice being given to the applicant?
So, yeah, just to come back to Councillor Allen's comment on that, yes, the decision will be issued straight away next few days.